Blazing Saddles is, to cut a very long story short, funny. Really funny. I hadn't seen it in probably 15 years, and I didn't really like it when I did. In retrospect, that's probably because I didn't understand its satire of racism in America. At the time, I hadn't really even thought about racism, I hadn't been forced to confront it. I've covered some mileage since then, and so I think it's a masterpiece. The plot concerns the attempts of a devious railroad baron, played by Harvey Korman, to run off the denizens of a town to make way for his railroad. He enlists redneck henchman Slim Pickens and a gaggle of uncouth cowboy stereotypes, including the infamous hulking Mongo, to terrorize the town and kill the sheriff. The townsfolk request a new sheriff from the lieutenant governor, played by Brooks, of course, but the Baron intervenes and assigns Bart, a jailed railroad worker played by Cleavon Little, to be the new sheriff. Bart is black, and the Baron figures this will so horrify the good white townsfolk they'll abandon the town altogether. Of course, it doesn't work out as planned. Bart is resourceful and has at his side the Waco Kid, played by the ever-adorable Gene Wilder, slightly crazed, slightly untrustworthy, gentle, and hilarious. He's also aided by goofy, lovely Madeline Kahn doing her best Marlene Dietrich shtick. The sparring between Bart, townsfolk, and the Baron revs up to a typically absurd Western climax where everyone comes together to beat the bandits and save the day, then kicks over the fake sets, stampedes across the Warner Brothers backlot, commissary, front gate, onto Grauman's Chinese Theater, and finally back through the looking glass into Westernland, albeit with one final kick to the pants on the way to the credits. And that tells you nothing about this movie. This movie is silly, stupid, and vulgar. Yes, all of the things that have ever been said about it are true. It is also the most stinging x-ray of American racism I've seen in a while. The first 5 minutes of Blazing Saddles is a miracle of screenwriting, running its black protagonist through a quick history lesson. The slaves were freed, yes, then dumped into an unofficial and arguably more devious form of economic slavery. Their worth is so low that the railroad boss would rather send them to their deaths than a couple of more expensive horses. And when they are caught in quicksand, it's the handcart they were riding that's rescued, not them. Almost lost a $400 handcart, says Pickens. Every stage of this movie, every confrontation Bart has with the townsfolk, I imagine a lot of black Americans have been through in one form or another. When Bart shows up for work and the shocked, offended townsfolk pull guns on him, he gets out of it by acting crazy, pulling a gun on himself, and threatening to blow his own head off, backing slowly away until he's safe. I was reminded of Eddie Murphy's stand-up routine from Raw, I think, where he says that every black guy in America learns to act crazier and tougher than he is to bluff his way out of just such a pinch. Or there's an old lady who treats Bart rudely, but after he saved the town from Mongo, she brings him a pie and apologizes for her earlier behavior. But then again, returns to suggest that he has the good taste not to mention she spoke with him. And of course, the delightfully twisted joke that has Bart delivering an anachronistic candygram to Mongo, then patting himself on the back saying, "The bitch was inventing the candygram, and they probably won't even give me credit for it." Of course, this movie is from 1974, and all of it hasn't aged well. Brooks takes a poke at Hollywood's Native American stereotypes, the stern profile, the headdress, the habit of casting, for instance, Italians instead of authentic peoples, and it is pretty funny hearing him do his Yiddish routine. But without scratching a little deeper, it could come off as bad form. And in the finale, when Blazing Saddles cast stampedes into the closed set of a Busby Berkeley-type musical performed by a troupe of gay men in top hats and tails, I'd understand if someone was offended by the jokes. When the cast lets loose with a big group lisp, the director within the movie, played by Dom DeLuise, quips, "It sounds like steam escaping." I do think that's just kind of rude. But the scene in general, I think the funniest part is when one cowboy and a tuxedo dancer disappear into a tunnel fighting and come out the other side arm in arm, the cowboy whispering, "I'm parked over by the commissary." Nonetheless, these are different times, and in many ways, the method of satirizing society's faults, of upending its entrenched hypocrisy, must change, and has changed. As an example that might have been funny in 1974, I'd point you to Anchorman 2's family dinner scenes, wherein an oblivious, white Will Ferrell character behaves badly at a black family's dinner table. That scene simply does not work, despite being formally similar to the humor in Blazing Saddles, because we need satire, but it needs to strike at contemporary hypocrisy, not that of 4 decades past. So if Blazing Saddles is particularly offensive, I'd say don't shoot the messenger. It's a hell of a portrait of its time.
Yeah, it's one of... There's so many things that are offensive in this movie. It's ridiculous.
It's funny because I feel like people are offended by things that are silly, like the farting scene or Like there, from what I could read about this, like I almost saw this as a new movie. And I'm sorry to keep talking, Tom. I apologize, but this movie really blew my mind because I had not given it thought in years. I love Young Frankenstein, but in general, I'm not a huge Mel Brooks fan.
Okay, and
And
I agree with you on that. To me, Brooks is hit or miss. So
yeah,
I'll
and
add
he's
out of
very
the
slapsticky, and I've never been really slapsticky. I always
sure,
liked the Marx Brothers more because there was wit and physical humor, but it was not like, bucking and eyes rolling and go, like it wasn't that kind of a thing. And Brooks is very much that. So this blew my mind that everything in that movie was deeply offensive because it was an accurate portrait of the way white, like waspy Americans behave around
sure,
black people.
sure.
And no one seems to be offended by that, which is bizarre. It's like either you get it and you understand that it's funny because it's hurtful and it's accurate, or you miss it completely and you think it's just being vulgar humor,
So you made a comparison to the contemporary film, and I didn't see it, but I was having trouble following the point there. So like when you make that same joke now, it doesn't work because it's not.
Because it's
We don't.
the sensibility of 1974 is that was pretty ballsy to make that movie and release it in a Hollywood system where it's basically showing what idiots white people can be around black people and on the subject of racism in general, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so he's like for an hour and 20 minutes, he's just pummeling, the silliness of white people doing these things, right?
Right.
And in Anchorman 2, they basically do the same thing, but this is 20. I mean, that movie came out in what, 2014, I guess. That's not funny anymore. We are like the pulse of hypocrisy in the culture has moved elsewhere. I want to see that hypocrisy upended, but you can't do that by lampooning the hypocrisy of 1974. So I feel like a lot of comedy has become outdated because it's still making fun of the hypocrisy of decades past.
Because we've had the racism discussion in the public.
We still
for
have
a
plenty of
long time.
racism, but the way
Yeah, but
people,
we've
white people today think they're far more enlightened, and that doesn't mean they
Right.
are. It just means
So the
that they
funny
think. So
thing,
the hypocrisy is that we think we're enlightened. So hit that hypocrisy.
right? Like if like they do make jokes like that, like, oh, I have so many black friends. Like that's what they were. That's kind of the
But
satire. I
and
guess
it's still
probably about 10 years ago, or
exactly,
whatever.
and
Probably.
it's
Yeah,
still fairly soft. And I mean, in reviewing this stuff, like these three comedies that we've been through, it just reminds me that I think we're overdue for, like when Borat came out, that was a shot in the arm for comedy.
I thought that was the funniest. That when I saw
Yeah,
that
so
movie,
you
I was
really speak highly of Borat.
dude, it was the funniest movie I'd seen in the movie theater. I couldn't fucking believe it. I had no idea. Well, first of all, I think it was the element of surprise because I had no understanding of what I was about to see, and then when it started happening, I couldn't fucking believe it was happening.
And
I don't know why
he's upending, like he figured out a new method to upend our sense of ourselves with this fake documentary format, right? And
right.
that was I think all, like Borat and Duck Soup and Blazing Saddles all share a common formal structure of upending normal formats. In other words, Duck Soup is this anarchic, it does not care about form, and it runs around just poking in the nose everything about politics, by setting it around this idea of a war and Fredonia, and it's a spoof of European politics, right? Blazing Saddles upends our cliche, our stereotypes of the American West, which is the heart and soul of white America's identity about itself as the heroic cowboy and the cavalry and settlers and pioneers and all this stuff, right? And then Borat is he's using the documentary form, the reality TV form that we're all so familiar with by that point, to show how we actually behave normally when confronted with this absurd character,
And also anti-Semitic, and it's taken taken aim at just latent anti-Semitism.
He's getting people to be honest accidentally,
right? Just to show them out, show how silly everybody and how serious everybody takes themselves, and yeah.
It's
that's a big difference too. Is that Borat now, or this 10 years ago, but like has to go into the real world to to show the audience like, no, it's still happening.
Well, you got to go where the
like,
nerves are. You got to hit people
Yeah.
in the nerve center, and
like it's not good enough to.
We're in Andy Warhol's 15 Minutes of Fame culture. We all want to be on TV. We all think of ourselves. I read today that there's a new psychological syndrome called Truman Syndrome, informally. Apparently, psychiatrists are getting patients who believe that they are like Truman from the Truman Show, and their whole life is a reality TV show.
What?
One person climbed the Statue of Liberty and was arrested because he thought that he was in a reality TV show where he was going to be reunited with his long lost love on top of the Statue of Liberty. Another one,
but that's just clear insanity.
It's also
another
just
one flew to New
Sleepless in
York.
Seattle.
Another one flew to New York deliberately to see the World Trade Center because she didn't believe that they had actually been destroyed. She thought that was a plot twist in her reality TV show. I mean, that's the genius of Borat, is he went out into a world where people believe these sorts of things and gave them a stage, to say whatever the fuck they wanted,
Yeah, I mean that's that's more formal than some of the other, like actually the text of the satire, you know what I mean? But that's the way that you reach people is through the form of the day. So that's how Borat made that giant leap, actually, which was brilliant.
Yeah.
Truman Syndrome.
Do you have Truman Syndrome, Tom?
I don't have Truman. I am just stunned that's. I'm speechless on that one.
It's just like if you read the old Freud text and stuff, everyone still had those same types of delusions. They were just they were adapted to their day. And now with reality TV, that same disorder has pretty much just latched onto.
It's kind of true. I've heard younger people talk like they think they're on, like in weird ways like this. I used to work with this young lady that thought that when the Jersey Shore program was at its peak, she was trying to convince everyone that she was on her own hit reality TV show called Bridges and Tunnels, she was calling it. But it didn't exist. It didn't exist.
Did it exist on her cell phone?
She would talk about her contract and, the money and how her fame, it's too much. And
so you met someone with Truman Syndrome.
I guess so, yeah. But I thought she was just a fucking psychopath.
So you had to coin it. You missed your opportunity to coin the phrase. You should have called it Bridge and Tunnel Syndrome.
Actually, I'm sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
So I don't want. I hate to make light of people with actual
Truman
psychological and neurological difficulties, but really hope all these Truman Syndrome people find their own personal sky wall.
Yeah, right. And their reality crashes down. They realize,
with everything that Brooks is doing here in Blazing Saddles, he obviously created a very popular film that's lasted for 40 years. I mean, it's incredibly popular. People know this film. And Billy, what I'm curious about is, do you think that people actually like it because they're racist and they enjoy seeing racism?
I think you got a point, Tom. I mean, the thing is, it never ceases to shock me how sometimes the deeper joke goes over people's heads. And I was reading blogs about this. Well, I mean, like we said years ago on the show, I've known people who signed up for the military after watching Full Metal Jacket. Right? Like you can't make an anti-war film because people are just going to see it and go, "That kicks ass. I want to join up." Right? I was reading blogs,
and it's the same thing with the Wall Street thing too.
Yeah,
right? Like people are like, actual Wall Street people are all over that.
That's absolutely right.
I was reading reviews, blogger reviews of Blazing Saddles after this, and there were some people who just they just loved it because it was vulgar. All they saw was a dirty comedy, right?
Right.
So I really think I do think there are people who do not see that it's really, really upending the entire concept of American racism.
Right. I mean, Jeff, I say this because we have a relative that loves this movie, and I think it's clearly because he enjoys the racism in it.
Yeah, I
Is this
could.
the third Shrek brother?
No. It's someone, I'm not going to say people's names, but Jeff, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's what that's why it's a movie. That's why it's one of his favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
Because he enjoys that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's. Sorry, Jeff. You go ahead, Jeff. Sorry,
But
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
like you're saying, like the farting scene and stuff like that, or the his the Mel Brooks's voluptuous assistant, I'm sure is a favorite among the bloggers that you're talking about, Billy. Which is
they like the tits and dick and fart and N-word jokes. Like they think all that's like they just take it at face value.
Yeah, I think that that's the hallmark of what makes a good film good. Where in it confronts you and it asks you to participate and it asks you to think about what it is that you like about this film, right? And you have the difference in a comedy is, as opposed to sort of like this, like some weirdo art film or something, is that an art film, most people who don't get it just give up on it. Whereas, this movie is going to be in your face and it's going to confront you. Like, look at what I'm confronting. I'm confronting you with your latent prejudice and racism. And either if you don't get it, then you can just like the racism part, and you can still enjoy it. And there's that other level that you can. What was it? Oh man, I forget what some TV show where The Simpsons was brilliant because it's a show that stupid and smart people can like. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think it's the same kind of.
There's plenty. Yeah, you're talking about watching something with two different ways.
Right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah,
which is why, which is where Rorschach test in that you're coming away. I was tempted to put into the review like what you laugh at in this movie says as much about you as it says about the movie.
Hey, listen, I laughed when they were farting.
The farting. I mean, there's a lot of funny shit in this.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Aside from everything, the farting is hilarious. Like the townsfolk are all named Johnson.
That's genius.
The cast of the town is great. The guy who played Higgins on Magnum PI, I never remember the actor's
Victor
name.
French. It's the opening is just so fucking hilarious. The way that the black workers are just playing the song, like when they're like, can you sing us a song?
Get no kick
from champagne. Yeah, and they're doing that, and they're just like, no, the Slim Pickens is like, no, not something like that, and they're playing like confused, about the Camptown races and the Camptown lady and what was the other swing lows. They're scratching their head like, what the heck are you talking about? But the minute they're away from those guys, they're singing those songs.
Like, what in the wide world of sports are you guys doing here? I love it.
What's also what struck me odd was that there was 5 writers on this film, and yet it didn't have an effect on how the film came out, which is great. Whenever I see a film and there's more than 2 writers, we'll go with 2. When there's 3 or more writers, usually the film's a disaster, and this film doesn't suffer from that.
One of the writers was Richard Pryor, wasn't he? Yeah. Who was originally going to play the part of it's not Black. Is his name Black Bart? The Cleveland
in the script.
Yeah, Bart. Yeah, he was going to play that part, and the studio didn't want him to play because they didn't want to take a risk on him. I guess he wasn't doing so well at the time.
He's not really great on screen anyway, Richard Pryor. So it's actually probably better that Cleavon Little did it because he did a great job.
I loved him in The Toy.
There's
another one with the same type of racial humor in a lot of ways.
Sure,
The Toy with Richard Pryor.
Go on, Billy.
No, just the screenwriting thing. The craziest thing that, like, when I was watching it, I knew that Mel Brooks and Richard Pryor had worked on the script together, but when I was watching it, I thought I could pick out, like, I love Richard Pryor. I think he's the best stand-up of all time. And as I was watching the movie, I thought that I could pick out what scene, what joke he had come up with and everything. And by the end of it, I went and read, and it turns out he focused most of his writing on Mongo. He invented the character of Mongo and fell in love with it and did all of the Mongo scenes. And apparently Mel Brooks liked to joke that because the other writers were all Jewish. So he said it was a bunch of Jewish guys doing black humor and one black guy doing Jewish humor on the script. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. I'm like watching this, like I can't tell who did what. Like you got that many writers in a room, and I just feel like it's all very cohesive. I mean, you obviously know when Mel Brooks is running the show because, you know, the cowboys break out of the film set and go storming into a musical. Pretty sure that's Mel Brooks' influence, right?
Yeah, of course. Or any kind of song and dance going on is Mel Brooks. Yeah. Speaking of song and dance, real quick, guys, I don't know what it is, and I hope, listen, I don't like Madeline Kahn. I don't know what it is. Oh, no. But I cannot. She kind of ruins some of the movie for me. Oh, I can't get into her.
Yeah, she's great.
Fucking amazing.
She's pretty bad in this.
Right? I don't like it. I don't like what she's doing. I don't like anything that's
really.
No, I can't stand it. It fucking bothers me. You know, when I was watching the movie, I forgot about how annoying she was in this movie. Like, you know, I just don't. I can't. I don't know what it is. Jeff, thank you for backing me up on that because I thought I was going to get thrown out of here for saying something like that. But wow, yeah. I mean, are you
Tom? You said you're not a Mel Brooks fan in general. What's your likes and dislikes in general history with Blazing Saddles?
Oh, I've always found it to be, and you know, it's funny too. I'll start off by saying this: it's one of the few westerns I could watch.
That's funny.
I'll definitely say that. I've always loved Gene Wilder, so like whenever I get a chance to watch Gene Wilder on screen, I'm there, and that carried me, I think, through this. Initially was that I just loved Gene. Even as a kid, I loved Gene Wilder, and oddly enough, I loved some of the stuff that Wilder and Pryor do. I think that the only time that I like Pryor, besides Brewster's Millions on screen, and maybe The Toy too, is what he does with Gene Wilder. So when you're a kid and watching it, like you could, you even if you don't understand, the adult humor and the Hollywood humor and the racist humor, there's a lot of things slapsticky that you could kind of get into, particularly the farting nonsense. So when you're a kid, Mongo is great. If you're younger and you're trying to get into this stuff, Mongo is just like one of the most perfect characters, that a kid could relate to. So, but Brooks, on the other hand, I don't like his governor character. I don't like him on screen. I never really have. I'm not a fan of Young Frankenstein at all. Like, I don't see anything in that movie. Like, I've tried watching it a few times, cannot get into it. The only two movies I could really support by Brooks is this one and Spaceballs, and that's it. And I think what he does later is just dread. That Robin Hood Men in Tights, I think, is dreadful. and the last film that he directed was Dracula, Dead and Loving It, actually with Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah.
So that just goes ahead and ties everything together. That was the last film that Mel Brooks did, and it was with Leslie Nielsen. But as I got older, Billy, it became more and more apparent what Brooks was trying to do with this film. So it grew on me even more. So
when I was younger, it was all Gene Wilder. Like the only thing that I laughed at consistently was Gene Wilder. Like where he does the raises his hand and Bart's like steady as a rock, and he's like, yeah, but this is my shooting hand.
Yeah,
that's straight out of the Marx Brothers.
Right.
Like that,
Yeah, but it's just easy, good humor.
Yeah, or when Bart is about to go confront Mongo and he's strapping on his guns, and Gene Wilder's like, oh, no, don't do that. If you shoot him, you'll only make him angry.
But you get older and then you realize how funny a line is. Like, "You boys, look what I got here!" And Gene Wilder pulls Cleavon Little out from behind the rock, and he's like, "Where are the white women at?" Because that's something that, like, a dummy. Like, if you're dumb and you're just ignorant, you wouldn't. You hate. You hate a black person for dating a white woman. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of like, you see what Brooks is getting at, that you have to be a stupid moron. You have to be a KKK member to dislike that kind of concept.
He actually does put that in the movie. He puts the line in the movie where Gene Wilder is trying to console Bart about like why everyone's like mistreating him, and he like,
it's the common. They're the common clay.
Yeah, the clay of the land.
Morons.
Morons.
Right, morons. But that's the kind of that's the kind of shit that just ruins our society, or the people that think that way, and that's what I think Brooks is driving at. But like I said,
I love that.
That's why I said earlier, what frightens me is the people that like this movie because they do think that way, and they're seeing it their way and that way, which is frightening.
Yeah.
I love back in the 70s, being politically correct in a film like this. You can be politically correct to make a point, make people laugh, and now they use the term politically correct in order to veil their hatred and racism. It's like the complete opposite. When someone like Trump says, "I'm tired of all this political correctness," I'm going to be politically incorrect, which just basically means that I'm going to just be outright racist, which is the complete opposite.
Isn't that weird? Yeah.
It's always great how a term starts out meaning one thing, and give it a couple of decades, it completely inverts itself.
Yeah. It's sad. It's terribly sad, man. But political incorrectness is a powerful tool. It's weird now that it's been inverted to mean basically, you have free reign to be hateful, and be stupid, say ugly shit, where before it was to expose stupidity and hate. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the thing is that you can get away with offending whole groups of people, if you don't take yourself too seriously.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, he's goofing on himself, and he's being as much as everything's free game. So when you can, and this goes back to Borat too. If you don't take yourself too seriously, you can, laugh at what you are and what your hang-ups are and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It just eases the tension. Political incorrectness eases the tension rather than exacerbates it, which is what our current court jester is up to these days.
Our current court jester. Oh man,
the orange-haired one.
Hey Jeff, what with Brooks? I mean, are you into his stuff? I mean, as a whole, I mean, are you a fan of the producers or High Anxiety, any of that stuff?
I didn't see that many of them growing up, but I did love, like, Spaceballs. I've been watching since it came out.
Yeah,
I was like 4 or 5.
Right.
And the Robin Hood movie, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I definitely have a soft spot for it because it came out. I was like, yeah, I was like 10 when it came out.
Right.
So I have those, like, good memories. Sort of like with the Third Naked Gun. Like I remembered that being very funny, and obviously I watched it again, and it was anything but.
Yeah.
But I actually just recently started going through some of the 70s films. A friend of mine heard that I had not seen most of them, so he got me the box set for my birthday a couple of years ago. And I've been enjoying them for the most part. Like something like High Anxiety, I'm into. History of the World, I like half of that. I liked half of it.
I'm with you on that. And I should have mentioned History of the World as well. I could definitely watch History of the World.
I loved History of the World.
Yeah, there's some really great, funny stuff in that film. Really great.
Like, really, I just love them going for, like, the replacing the U's with V's on every sign. in the Roman is just so funny.
I'm gonna go with the he's a eunuch scene.
Yeah.
No, nobody remembers that.
I don't remember
What
that.
is it?
No.
Oh, okay. Everyone's got to go watch History of the World. First.
Well, maybe I will. I remember Mel Brooks in Rome. He was a stand-up philosopher, and I remember him being on the unemployment line.
Yeah, B. Arthur was the unemployment agent.
Yeah. So you're a bullshit artist.
So you're a bullshit artist.
Yeah. Did you bullshit anybody today? Did you try to bullshit anybody yesterday? Yeah.
I like they roll the giant joint, and when they're being chased by the chariot, they light it, and it's like the smoke signal.
Exactly. They smoke out everyone behind them. All the Romans just pull off to the side and lay in the grass.
Little Cheech and Chong.
And the Spanish Inquisition, right? Isn't there like a big?
Oh my god!
Torquemada.
I mean, that's
That is
fucking hilarious, man.
That was
The
great.
whole Spanish Inquisition chapter is that big, fucking big music scene. Is ridiculous.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. Inquisition. No.
Hey, Joe. One last question before we wrap things up. Did Anthony like Mel Brooks?
Oh, did we watch Mel? What did we watch?
Because I think you were saying that you wanted to turn him on to Mel Brooks.
No, I watched one with it. Oh, we watched
And
Spaceballs.
That's right. And you said that he wasn't into it.
It didn't. I mean, there were some parts of it that were funny. I think maybe just coming off the Star Wars series so intensely, over the past few months,
Right, right.
maybe
Well,
made it fall a little bit flat or whatever. I don't know.
would you be cool with him watching Blazing Saddles?
I don't. I
was
I
thinking
would
about
be.
that when I was.
I would be.
All right.
Yeah, he could definitely handle it. I don't think that it's anything that there's not much in there that's like
He's
too over-
16?
Yeah, he's definitely.
Jeez, I
gonna
was
watch
watching
it.
Blazing Saddles when I was like 8.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't think that that it would translate well. To be honest with you, I don't know. I don't think that it would. I should.
Joe,
I wanted
farting.
to.
There's some farting in there.
I wonder.
You know what's
how
funny?
dated this thing is to someone who's never seen it before.
That's
like
that's
Anthony's age.
interesting.
I think it probably looks really, really like it doesn't make any sense. Like I was actually thinking when I was watching this, yes, I get this, but if someone thought that this was not funny in general and also offensive, I think that's a totally justified opinion.
Interesting.
Tom, that farting scene. One.
Yes. Of course.
When they played this movie on TV, they cut out the sound, so they didn't want it.
Why do they do? Get out of town.
So, yeah, I just watched it on the Blu-ray. They played the scene as it was presented on TV, and they're sitting around the fire, but you can't hear any of the fart. There's no farting sound, so it just looks like they're eating. They're all sitting around eating beans in silence. It's the most ridiculous thing you could ever see in your.
That actually sounds kind of funny.
I mean, it's funny in a
And absurd. It's absurd. Wow, that's why would they cut the farting out?
I don't think this was the first time that anybody really farted on camera. I believe I'm pretty sure that it's the first time where like a fart ever was.
Well, only 10 years earlier was the first time like a toilet was shot, right, in the Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Psycho.
Right.
Yeah, and that was just 10 years. So you're talking 74, like so about 14. Psycho was what, 60?
Right.
Okay, so 14 years earlier, they just for the first time.
The walls came down in the 60s.
Yeah,
man.
they showed a toilet and a bathroom.
The 60s were crazy. You started at
It
one.
took them 14 years to get to the fart. They had to go through the whole 60s decade. All that shit had to happen. Joe,
Yeah.
Martin Luther King, Vietnam, all that, RFK, JFK, all that shit had to take place, and then they got to the farting.
Thank
It
God.
happened.
Full frontal nudity came first, and then farts.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Even the year before, like, I mean, The Exorcist was out, right? So, like, even there was puking, that was out first before the farting. The farting.
It's heinous and disrespectful.
Hey, if anybody out there listening has an example of farting being used in a film before Blazing Saddles, please let us know, because we're definitely interested.
And I wonder too if like a film at the same time had done a fart scene, but it was like a serious drama about a man with gastrointestinal distress, and it's like he's hospitalized with it with gas pains. Like if
What,
they
like an
would,
educational film?
no, like a serious drama, like gunning for an Oscars kind of a film. But he's got stomach problems and he's in the hospital all the time. And I wonder if they would have censored that on TV.
You can get away with the serious fart, but not the fart for laughs.
Oh, man. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for participating in the last 2 episodes, man. It's been a real blast. Joe, thanks for bringing all this farting and nonsense to the cutting room.
Yeah, I figured we'd start the
change,
season.
especially when it comes to you, believe me.
That's it. Next time you get Ingmar Bergman and silent films.
We are going to be back in a couple weeks, and Max Cook and Adam Shoulder are back in the saddle, so we're going to be doing Straight Outta Compton. And then after the episode after that, we're doing Blood In, Blood Out in Colors. So I guess it's odd, Joe. It looks like we're going to be talking a lot about racial situations here. No.
Wait 1 minute while I whip this out.
And that's Joe's take on it. But I'd like to remind everyone that the music by The Cutting Room is done by the Zillatones. You can check them out at www.thezillatones.com or search for them on Reverb Nation. The show's edited by Joe Christiana and produced by myself and Joe. And we'd also like to thank Jeremy Garcia of Dartboard Cinema for helping us out on our social networking. We'll have Jeremy on, I'm sure, by the end of the season, so definitely look out for that. You can check out Max Cook's blog at maxcookuncorked.com, and you can also check out Adam Shoulder's Starland PC at starlandpc.com, and you can check out Joe's film work at christianaproductions.com. Like I said, we're going to be back in 2 weeks with Max, Adam, Joe, and myself. We're going to be talking about Straight Outta Compton. I cannot wait. Until then, we are over and we are out. Ciao.
Next time to satisfy more of your strange desires. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast. We do chicken right.